First off, I want to thank the brave men and women who work behind the wall. I want to thank them on a national level because their job goes unrecognized.
How do they try to turn a guard?
Well, correctional officer. Sorry, I apologize. But correctional officer.
Hi, I'm Connie Alleyne, the founder and CEO of the Civilian Corrections Academy. It is so great to connect with you again. Really, today I'm excited because I get to talk about public health. Woo woo! That's just like another side of me. And combine that with my correctional knowledge. So we're going to talk about today just prison art, illegal artistry, whichever way you want to refer to it, prison tattoos. I mean, what's our reality? Prison tattoos are big business, right? They make however much money they make on it, how much commissary they could get for it, whatever they get what they get for being able to do tattoos in prison. I guess for me, you know, one of the things that really stands out is that tattoos are like, it's all the rave right now, right? So for you to be in prison and still be able to get a tattoo, I'm sure that sends some kind of message to somebody who cares, right? I don't know who cares, but it sends a message to someone. I think the other thing that I would mention about the tattoos is like it tends to carry some weight. You know, it garners respect. It could be menacing. It's symbolic of some power. I mean, it's symbolic of someone who has been able to defy the system. From an administration perspective, it's illegal, right? And so certainly there are consequences. I don't know all the consequences, but there will be consequences, or there are consequences to offenders getting tattoos behind the wall. From a medical perspective, it's a complete nightmare. Right? When you think of, in medical, what these guys are doing, how they're opening themselves up to all kinds of diseases, it is just a nightmare. Especially because these guys come into facilities already compromised, already having whatever medical and mental health issues that they have when they come in, and then you're going to add this level of exposure to them, which only compromises and really makes it very difficult to stabilize medically these inmates. I've learned some things in my time in the facilities, which is I was always curious, how do you guys get tattoos? So I would ask them. You know, I think the offenders would talk to me about certain stuff. Maybe they want to impress me. I don't know, and I don't care. But it's always good information to know from a medical standpoint. Like, I want to know what it is that they're doing. Like, something unusual comes across my desk. That's just additional information for me that I might not have because a book is not going to tell me that. You know, an inmate is the one who taught me how to make drinking alcohol in prison. So, when I want to know how you get a tattoo, that's really what I would say. How you get a tattoo in jail? Like, who does that? And, you know, so as far as I understand, most of the items that they get are from commissary, and they're just very creative with it. They take the motor from a CD or tape player, and it matters which one because one gives greater RPMs than another. So if you're doing shading, you use one. If you do lines, you're using something else. They also take the spring from a stapler to help fashion the needle. For ink, they use like Bible paper or chess pieces. They melt them so they have some way of starting a fire. Pop a socket, that's what it's called. They do that to get the fire going, and then so they melt the pieces of the checker pieces, and once the soot gets there, they take that soot and they mix it up with like baby oil or lotion or water, whatever they could get, and hence they've got ink, and hence they've got tattoos. And I mean, I read someplace else that they do use styrofoam cups, or they use shampoo. I mean, some other stuff says they use toothpaste. So there's tons of stuff, and you know, that they use. But just to say that they improvise would be like an understatement. They figure out what they need, and whatever it is they come up with, just know that it's just another toxic mix that gets added to all the other crazy that they come up with in there. But then I just want to talk more about the risk, right? So there is significant risk of infection anytime the skin barrier is broken. And so for these guys who are opening themselves up to getting tattoos in prison, really are opening themselves up to the transmission or contraction of bloodborne diseases, right? So the biggest concerns are hepatitis C, hepatitis B, MRSA, you got HIV transmission. I mean, there's a lot of research and data out there that supports the direct connection between inmates getting tattoos in prison and hepatitis C. The rate is 10 to 20 times more prevalent in prison that an inmate would get hepatitis C. Just think that with hepatitis C, it's a virus that attacks the liver, right? And that leads to inflammation. It could lead to, so many long-term consequences. You got hepatitis B, which is extremely contagious. I mean, we know the amount of treatment that these inmates need to be stabilized is far beyond anything I think that is typically budgeted within a fiscal year, right? So treating hepatitis, like anywhere from $80,000 to $100,000 to treat these diseases. I mean, HIV, there are more cost-effective ways to treat HIV, but HIV that isn't going anywhere, right? You get it, that's it. I can't even express how important it is that we are vigilant when it comes to inmates getting tattoos while in prison, right? So I think one thing that we probably don't do a great job at is the consequences. What are really the consequences for inmates getting tattoos? Different systems, you may get a charge of self-mutilation, right? Or there may be some restrictions on your commissary, or you may get sent to seg. But I mean, because it is a big business, like they go do their seg time, they come out, they get the equipment, they back at it. I read in one article that they were studying this guy who was doing, it was clearly he had a fake name and all this other stuff, but he was doing tattoos. He was one of the artists, and he said, I got busted one week, they took all of my stuff, and there were no consequences the first time he got busted. Second time he gets busted, because it took him like maybe a week or two in order for him to get, materials again. Second time he gets busted, he gets sent to seg. He comes out, he does it again. Like there was nothing significant enough to really deter him from actually doing tattoos, and he's like, well, I mean, even if there is long-term consequences, like from a health perspective, for these guys, they want it. I found a case actually in Georgia, in Reedsville, where the inmate had gotten a tattoo on his forearm. It started swelling. He was having a reaction to it. He wasn't sure what the issue was. He didn't go to medical at first because, you're not supposed to get a tattoo. And so the silence, of course, is what really gets them. And then over time, he started to feel really bad. He decided to go to medical, and medical had given him like some anti-inflammatory ointment. Now, I'm sure there are different protocols for infection, whether it was followed or not. The case doesn't speak to whether or not it was followed. Ultimately, the guy dies, which is awful, right? But apparently he went into like severe septic shock, and he had multiple organs fail. So he had liver failure, renal failure, and respiratory failure. I mean, of course his family is suing. So when you think of what are the greater implications to these tattoos, it's not just, you get a tattoo and, it's a gang symbol, it's a this. Like, yes, it matters, but the bigger picture is all of these health complications that come along with getting these tattoos while in prison. The contamination, the transmission, all of it. I mean, ink poisoning. I mean, you could get syphilis, staph infection. The list just grows. And I honestly feel like there is this vigilance to curb tattooing, but I don't know that we know when it happens, right? We don't know when it's happening. Yeah, you do the tours, you go here, like there's a presence in the facilities, but that's not necessarily the priority, right? You're focusing on sort of the bigger picture things that are going on from day to day. But one thing I found that I thought was really interesting was in Canada, they were a little more progressive in their thought process and decided to go the same route that here we do for inmates, or actually just in general, right? So there are these needle exchange programs, syringe exchange program for IV drug users. Where they can safely go and exchange needles so that they're not sharing needles. And so in Canada, they decided to pilot a program where they took 6 prisons at different security levels and created this safe tattooing parlor where those who were tattooing in the environment were given sterile equipment and taught how to ensure there wasn't transmission. They were given gloves to wear. And there was a criteria established for what kind of tattoo you could get and what size tattoo you could get. And in that first year, so they were only allowed to pilot for a year. It was from 2005 to 2006. And within that first year, they saw a reduction in rates of transmission. And really, they said this SAFE program was what they thought helped to reduce the transmission of bloodborne diseases. Now, who knows what else was going on at the same time that could have also influenced those numbers. So I'd like us to kind of keep that in mind, that it probably wasn't just, the program. There were probably other things that was being done to make sure, like universal precautions, right? Like there are other things that are being done in facilities to reduce the transmission of diseases, because we all work in those environments and nobody wants to go home with an unwelcome guest, right? Ultimately, there was a change in leadership, and so the new governor who came in was not in support of this, and they ended up, ending the program. But that wasn't without seeing some of the benefits, right? So you see the benefit to the offender, which is you don't get a disease, right? You don't transmit a disease. And whoever we're currently treating, at least we can maintain them stably. For the workers, right? So for custody officers, for the civilian officers who are exposed to these offenders, they're also not getting additional exposure, right? I mean, you think of nurses taking blood and needle sticks, right? They happen despite having retractable needles and all this other goodness that we've tried to put in place to keep nurses safe. I think one thing I just don't want to ignore, or I want to make sure I acknowledge, is that there are over 2.3 million inmates in United States prisons and jails. Of that 2.3 million inmates, a third of them are infected with hepatitis C. I just need to let that rest for a moment. 1/3 of the 2.3 million inmates in United States prisons and jails are infected with hepatitis C. This is not an issue that we should be taking lightly. We think, oh, it's just a tattoo. Right. Until you get home and you get tested, going through your regular physical maintenance, whatever, your routine medical stuff that you do at home, right? Your checkups, all of your goodness. And you find out that you have contracted some bloodborne disease, right? How many times there's a use of force that you get into something with someone, we don't want to not think about those offenders who know that they're not well and they intentionally try to expose people. While we would like to kind of brush over this whole tattooing issue because maybe we don't want to invest in what we need to invest in order to truly stop it from happening. Now, I'm not saying that this pilot that Canada did was the best thing, right? I think certainly more time and effort needs to go into researching, to finding the right solutions. What I am saying, though, is tattooing is happening, and rates of transmission continue to increase because they are tattooing in unsterile environments using unsterile or contaminated needles, sharing ink, all things that we know lead to the spread of disease. So whatever we need to do in facilities, we need to do it now, because things aren't going to get better if we don't start putting some things in place to help address this particular issue. I thank you for connecting. I'm so open to any questions, comments, concerns, any disagreement. I'm open, because I'm always open to learning something new. And I do hope that, my insights were helpful. So thank you for listening, and I hope to connect with you again soon.